Summer, I had a really quick kind of question. I get asked a lot, how many states or how many people are using PIDS? What's the actual number right now? 12, thank you.
Yeah, and it's on the dashboard, and there's a map so you can see what the states are. And yeah.
Perfect.
Oh,
Did you put the agenda in the chat, Summer?
I did.
Can you? Can you
I'll
just try one more time? We're having some issues with our chat today. I'm not sure what's going on, but could you just there it is. Thank you.
You bet. You got it. All right, so I'll go ahead and share my screen and put it up here. We have it. Looks like a bunch of people are logged in. All right, so we'll go ahead and get rolling again. We have a pretty full schedule of stuff to go through today. So first, want to just start with updates in PIDS since the last time we met. As you all should know, leadership coach log is now up and available in test. I did send Ben and our other programmer the feedback that I received via the survey that you sent back. So thank you all for getting that in, and those change requests. Most of them have been sent on to make those updates. And so we're still looking to have this tool available and live by the end of March in PIDS, which is great. Looking forward to that. I wanted to let you know that with the creation of this, as Ben and I were looking at trying to streamline the scheduling bit in there about when TPOTS, tippy toes, and BOQs are scheduled, we've made a bonus feature for you guys in PIDS, which I think is pretty cool. So if you remember previously, when you looked at the log, there was a spot to put if the teapot was scheduled or tippy toes and BOQ. And when we got to looking at it, it's like, well, there could definitely be multiple across classrooms within one program. So we thought a better way to do that would be just to pull the information in from a space in PIDS that is allowing you to indicate when they're scheduled. So within the BOQ dashboard, teapot dashboard, and tippy toes dashboard, you should see now a new section for schedule. And so just kind of similar to the leadership coach meetings that we have seen in the action plan, we do have a spot now to indicate when those items are scheduled. And then that information will just pull right onto the leadership coach log so they can see information that has already previously been entered. Any questions about that? Hopefully that feels like a good bonus feature.
Who can edit the schedule, the BOQs?
Right now, just the leadership coach log, but I feel like we should probably open that up to data collector and classroom coach data collector as well, since they can do BOQs.
Yep.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I don't think we had talked about that yet, but that would make perfect sense that they could come in and edit that.
Yeah, that's great.
Speaking of access, Summer, I had a question here. We have one site that has, it's a large district in Rockford, and she has her 5 centers, each have a leadership team. She would like everybody to go in and look at their data, but not everyone's data. Is that doable?
Yep, definitely doable. And I think we had talked about, so maybe we can chat after this about that particular scenario, putting them all in one hub. And then each of those districts being their own program in PIDS, so that you could just give access to the one program, or for the coach that's overseeing all of them, they would have that whole hub of programs to run reports and provide that coaching support.
Great, thank you.
All right, another update that has happened since the last time we got together is that we updated the child ID number, so it now auto-populates if it's left blank. We were having a lot of challenges with new states coming on board and coming up with a numbering lettering convention that would work in areas where they don't already have numbers assigned to children. And so now it functions just the same as the pyramid model professional, formerly employee, so that the system can just auto assign one if you don't want to come up with one. Still working with the infant and early childhood mental health group. And so we've had some more detailed discussions as of recently, getting a programmer in Maryland connected with Ben. And so having some of those really technical, weedy discussions. And so working on a draft that then we can present to the larger group and to this group for additional feedback and just to keep you guys all up to speed on what's going on with that project, but we're not quite there yet. So, all right. And then Ian, I would like to invite now to share with us the updates that have gone on since we last met related to the project in New York. You got it. Go ahead, Ian.
So Ben and I met again to kind of nail down everything that we wanted to do in our contract, our 2023 contract. So just to explain what it's going to be, there's 3 main parts and they're all really related to one is adding an address onto the program leadership team dashboard that the program adds in themselves. So essentially it makes it so that we can collect and generate lists of where the programs are located and their addresses right on PIDS. You know, I'm sure you guys have, but we have our own files, Google spreadsheets of all the programs and their addresses. So this is just a much easier way, and the programs add it themselves. This will also include their license number. In our case, it's an OCFS license number, and maybe more additional ones. I don't know if we talked about more than one license number, Ben, but I believe it's just one for right now, and that's optional. So it's not required when you're doing it. And then another part of the contract is adding for the master cadre, adding addresses to their user record. So in the user information page, they can enter in their own mailing address. And then this helps us we're adding on, I think, over 70 master cadre in 2023. And this helps us with our mailing lists a lot. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is kind of updating the master cadre dashboard that we use heavily for all of our peer model trainings and activities going on. So one issue that we're fixing is when a training or activity spans multiple days. Right now in the dashboard, you kind of have to enter this as 2 separate occurrences. We're going to make it so that one can be added one time, and then you enter in if there's a multi-day training, and then you'll add in the separate dates. And Ben, I'm not sure if I said what our final decision on what we wanted to do exactly, but it's going to be you have one session date, and if there's multiple, say you do peer model preschool module 1 on today, and then if there's another date tomorrow, maybe you'll be able to press a plus button, and that adds another date to add below, and then however many dates you need to add for that one training will be entered into PIDS, and that keeps it all tight.
Got it.
And then finally, it's kind of relabeling some things in the master cadre dashboard. Instead of calling them trainings, we're kind of just using the word activities because it includes, you know, things other than just trainings. And then we're making we're changing the relabeling in the leadership coach dashboard now of the coaching circle. I'm not sure how much other states are using the coaching circle sections, but we're making it say coaching circles / community of practice. And then instead of that section referring to people as leadership teams, because a lot of times in coaching circles, it isn't necessarily a leadership team, we're going to refer to them as group members. So that's just some little relabeling stuff. But if there's any questions about that, you know, feel free to let me know.
Great. Thank you, Ian. I turned off my video to hopefully resolve some of the audio issues that were happening for some. So you can look at my cute kids. Any questions for Ian on those changes in New York? Cool. All right. All right, so wanted to move on to some initial results that I have put together based off of that survey that I sent out just yesterday. So don't worry if you haven't had a chance to go through that with your team and send it in, no worries, but wanted to just show today kind of where we're sitting with half the states submitting feedback via that survey. So in each of these colored sections is kind of how the survey was broken up. So these are new forms in green, and then in this tan peach color are just general enhancements, so functionality. And then the purple part is reports. So we can start to see here where most states are leaning towards with priorities. So it's looking like right now as it sits for forms, we might be looking at the FCC BOQ, the newest version, getting that in PIDS, which I feel like, and Ben, please correct me if I'm wrong, that would probably be the easiest of the other two new forms, being that we already have an FCC BOQ in there. We just need to update it. Am I correct in saying that, Ben?
Yeah, there's some decisions that would need to be made on how to handle two versions of the same form in the system, but adding the new form should be fairly simple.
And when the new was PIDS launched with the new BOQ, the program BOQ that's currently in there, or was that a change that happened after PIDS was launched?
It's been the same one. From what I believe, it's been the version 2.
It has, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right, so yeah, we'll just have to look at, what the differences are, how they may impact reporting. If there's really anything to report on, have to pull and see what numbers we have in there for the FCC BOQ too. So.
Admittedly,
right.
for our state, it's better to have the new one in there. And if the old data needs to be, stored elsewhere, or whatever needs to happen for the new one, because we currently have people not entering this in because, we don't have the right form in there. So we're losing data in that way as well.
Yeah, I think that's similar in other states too. So definitely see why that is a high priority. For functionality enhancements, it is looking like the one we talked about last time, the user training linked across programs for a user. That is a high priority, as is the community coach log, continuing the enhancements on that tool. So we'll talk a bit about that next as well. As it sits right now, that's kind of where we're at. And then the discontinued child and pyramid model professional section, which I would combine also with the export or the mass grouping of discontinuations that we wanted to enhance that feature as well. And then for reports, wanted to talk a little bit about what's showing up right now as priority number 1, which is a custom report module, followed by action plan reporting. So Ben and I have had a little bit of time to kind of chat about a custom report module. And one of the issues that we're seeing that would happen based off of what I understand the desire is with that is knowing how to combine tables in a relational database. And so that's kind of a complex skill. And I'm not sure if that has fully been thought out as we're thinking about, we want to be able to run our own reports. Certainly a step in this direction has been to provide those Excel exports of each dashboard and data so that then you can combine your own Excels and do pivot tables and whatever other analysis you want. But to be able to say, I want to look at BIRs in this classroom compared to TPOT scores in this classroom, that takes kind of knowing some SQL and how to combine tables in a database. And so I feel like that might be too much for a tool, and wanting to just bring that up and talk through that with this group and see what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, in the way I think of it, anyone who is able to, make a relational database, like, one-to-many, one-to-one, all those kind of relationships, and create that environment. And I think they're able to just take the data themselves, and then import it into an SQL server to do it. So if it's that complicated to put all that onto PIDS, I mean, I know for sure there's, very limited people who would be able to use it in that way, on our end. So if it is that, if the only way is to make it, those are the requirements that high, I would say it's not worth the endeavor. But
I'm wondering what states are doing with their current analysis. Who's combining what dashboards with other dashboards and doing more complex analysis. I wish Washington was on the call, because I know they have done some of this, and I can follow up with Julie and share that information back, but wondering what has been done or what you would hope to do, and then maybe we can design some reports that we can give to Ben to build out that would be adequate.
So I can, a few things that we've been doing in Wisconsin is we like to look at BIR, specifically expulsions and suspensions by program fidelity on the BOQ as well. And I would love to do it at the classroom level as well, but it's really difficult because we have multiple programs that are using the same classroom name. So I can't, like, figuring out which classroom to click. It's going to take me a long time to do that, but that is something that we would be interested in doing, to see if, to see what we set as the bar of fidelity is actually meaning anything to kids.
Yeah.
So that would be one. I also even within one dashboard, I think there are some potential kind of custom reports or whatever that would be helpful. So for example, being able to compare first teapots to second teapots over time, right? So it's first teapot, no matter when it happened within a window, but being able to do that kind of work easily would be really helpful as well.
So maybe more flexibility in the criteria rather than grouping things into fall, spring, the way that they're
and I would say
done.
the fall, spring is really helpful too. I'm not saying get rid of fall, spring, because fall, spring is really helpful.
For sure.
But I also think kind of for that, again, for kind of that looking at trends over time as a state, being able to compare, see where people are coming in no matter when they got their training, or being able to say we unleashed this new training content. Here's the first teapot based on that training content. Well, how does that compare to our old training content? Would be really helpful. That's something that we do a lot, or not a lot, I'm working on as well. I also think, sorry, someone cut me off because I'll just keep going.
You're good.
We also are looking at comparing infant toddler classrooms to preschool classrooms with BIR collection and ASQ. Because we're really working hard to roll out our infant toddler series. And so being able to kind of see what the differences are between those classrooms could be really helpful for us. And I also will put in there the ASQ over time would be very helpful for programs, being able to see what percentage of children fell in the above monitoring and below categories for that fall, spring. But that's not triangulating data or whatever. It's just within one dashboard.
Right. Well, I mean, I feel like some of those things, and Marissa, you're far enough along in this that you probably have a really good sense of probably what other states are going to be interested in too. I saw a lot of heads nodding with the teapot. And so maybe, Ben, it sounds like increasing the flexibility in our current report section to perhaps allow for specific date selection or other ways to view data, maybe not within the same report. Maybe we're looking at different reports, but what are your initial thoughts on that? Not to put you on the spot and crush Marissa's dreams, which I know you won't do.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly do some with flexibility with the canned reports. Extensive flexibility is more difficult. So for example, right now we have an ASQSE trend report that shows a child's ASQSE above, below, or monitoring over time for however many they have. Allowing that to be grouped rather than by child to by classroom, say, so where it aggregates information, isn't possible to do on a dynamic level. We would have to manually create a section of that report that has that kind of grouping and stuff. So we do have some options for flexibility, but for the most part, the criteria just allows you to filter. Some stuff like comparing between, so for Marissa's example, comparing the BOQ to the, was it the tippy toes or was it the BIRs? You want to see implementation status versus outcomes?
Yeah, versus outcomes on the BIR.
Yeah. That can be done in a canned report. However, I think would be somewhat difficult just because of the fields on the BOQ and what are you measuring off the BIR. But an option there would be if you pulled the current data export reports, or if, so for example, if you made an Excel sheet based off of those Excel export reports, if you keep that Excel sheet and you have just one worksheet that is the source for all of your calculations in the other sheets, you could consistently refill that with new data. So it's almost like creating your own custom report in Excel and then using the data exports to fill it with data. Certainly possible. It saves time on our end for programming. It leaves you the ability to make whatever calculations you want, whatever charts, pivots, etc. So that's another option for kind of custom reporting. Obviously, it's a lot more work on state sides, but it allows you the maximum amount of flexibility in your data.
Yeah, I will say I don't know, and I don't mean to speak for all the states, but I don't know how many states have an Ian or a Marissa sitting at their leadership team where it's just like our main focus is data and PIDS. So I do think that could be a challenge for some people. I don't want to speak for anyone, but I wonder if that would be a challenge. I also wonder about with that, right, with the new program status piece that you put in there, which is really nice about, oh, you can put people as sustaining and implementing. That might be a nice filter on some of those reports, right? Because then I could pull like an equity report by out of school suspension and filter, and then at least I could get the raw numbers to like then compare. So that would maybe thinking about that filter might be helpful.
I wonder,
that's
Ian,
on our list, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I wonder, Ian and
Sorry.
Marissa, do you guys have, I'm just thinking as you guys are sharing this and talking about this Excel, maybe there are, we can create like a library of these kind of templates that already have the formulas built into them. And so then we could share it out with other states and just drop your BOQs here, drop your BIRs here, and it runs. So would love to collaborate or help build some of those, or, you know, if you guys have any of those to share, that'd be sweet. In the meantime, again, right?
Yeah, I have nothing to share currently in that respect, but that we were on the same thinking. I was just about to say, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the PIDS end, but what if we have like a collection of these custom templates, you know, that, you know, we can make, and maybe with, you know, some of Ben's expertise help in formulas and you know, and then we can kind of have together in a shared, you know, it could even be on the PIDS dashboard. That you know, that's kind of where I'm thinking in terms of custom reporting now.
I love that idea. In addition to still getting to Ben some of these higher priority ones that would really be nice to have in a canned format. I think that would be great. So what I think I'll do is I'll start to think and get a plan together for this Excel sharing space and explore some of that myself and comparing some of these pieces that Marissa talked about. And then I'll send out another survey. And what I'm curious to hear is, thinking about these canned reports, I would like your feedback and your state's feedback on what reports would be the most valuable to be built in a canned report, so that we can then start to prioritize those with all of our other priorities. So it looks like action plan reporting was next on the list. So specifically with the action plan reporting, what story do we want to tell? What does that report potentially look like? Is some of the feedback I'm interested in getting at this point, so that we can move forward and get some meaningful reports built in PIDS that we can see on action planning. And Ian, I don't know if New York has gone there with in thinking about the action plan, since that was kind of your guys's project as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, in my mind, I think, I can speak for the team. The action steps is certainly a big piece of, what we want to report on from that. And I don't think it needs, we're kind of in my head relaying between, can we just have like one action plan report that'll have everything we need? I feel like that's easier than breaking it up. But I don't know how much else there is to break up. It doesn't really make sense to have like just an action steps report and then have ground rules statement elsewhere. So essentially, there isn't much in a report beyond the action steps. Like, it's a lot of open field text, I feel, that you just put up onto a report and just show that this was what was entered. But then when you get to the action steps, you have, time ranges, what the step was, and then changes with that step throughout time.
Right.
That can all be reported on, but I really can't, I'm thinking of the prior fields, they're really just open fields that are entered, like the ground rules.
That makes sense, and certainly a good place to start. Another thing that I've thought of too, and also that might be helpful with the leadership coach log that Ben and I have discussed, is adding those pieces to the activity tracking report, so that in conjunction with, BOQs and TPOTs being done, you can see, action plan was done this month, or the leadership coach logs were done these months, just to get that high level overview of what's been done. So could be a good addition there too, if it'll fit, Ben.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you guys are talking about. So when you're saying an action plan report, you're really just talking about like a print feature for the action plan, but on the reports page, or would it like include some like tables or graphs, or would it just really just kind of be like a print off of the action plan?
You are right. That's a good point, Marissa.
I'm thinking of a report where you can see over the course of time progression on the action steps.
That's what I'm thinking, but like with what you're saying, Marissa, it's probably not necessary with, what I just said. It's not necessary to include everything else if it's just essentially making it the same thing as the print version, right? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I wasn't even trying to say anything. I was just trying to clarify what we were. I just want to make sure I understood. Sorry, I had no intention. If I did, I would have just put it out there.
I think it could be helpful in looking at aggregate too over time. How many action steps were completed in this time frame, and how many are still in progress, or how many were discontinued. So thinking about action plans over the course of like 5 years would be nice to have some kind of overall picture to show that change over the course of each year in what's happening.
And the same thing with the hubs and even state groups, which were, I just said in our last, I'm the chair of our data work group meeting, or data work group in New York, and I'm trying to get our action plan, because we can make one now, we're a work group. So I'm trying to get that going in PIDS as well. So it's nice to have all those, being able to just quickly be able to see that in a report.
Mhm.
And then, Summer, one thing you said that I just want to make sure I'm understanding is my understanding is that you're planning on adding leadership coach logs and an action plan date to the tracking report.
Or just completed or not completed, like a empty box or like a, completed one.
But just to
in
like
the
that,
box.
that's super awesome.
Yeah.
That
And
is the
so I
cool
had
thing.
talked to Ben about adding the leadership coach log to that just yesterday. And now
Okay.
my brain is like, well, it'd be nice to add the action plan when it was done, again, to create that high level. So Ben, I don't know if that's easy enough to add, or maybe if we're talking about a different activity tracking report. In my mind, it's nice to see everything in one spot, in one nice view, but hopefully it'll fit.
Out of curiosity, with when you say the leadership coach log, is there any way to indicate who the leadership coach is in that, on that tracking report? In the sense that you see a list of programs and they do or do not have the leadership coach log. It might be easy to see quickly who that leadership coach is right there. If we don't think it's a good idea, don't worry.
I mean, I like it who the current one is, because it could be different over time.
I
But
just
Ben,
I throw them out either way, good or bad.
yeah.
My only thing is I just don't want it to grow in size because it's just so nice.
Yeah.
It prints really well right now.
Yeah.
So don't make it grow vertically, please.
Yeah. And if it's going to get messy like that, then I think we would be looking at, creating a different report that can show these pieces that we're talking about with the detail that we're looking at. So certainly, don't want to screw up the tracking report because it's fabulous.
Yeah, and to your question, Summer, for leadership coach logs, they either select a date or a month. For action plans, it's a range, right? It's potentially a whole year. So, I mean, you would just have to decide, like, do we just want to show the last time it was updated on that kind of tracking report? Like, was it updated
like last
in June?
edit date, that would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Is that possible? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I love that.
So yeah, that's certainly possible too. Stuff like that is definitely doable, and without making it too big, Marissa, we can shrink some of the padding on the existing stuff and shrink the margins, so we should be able to fit in at least one horizontally, if not two.
Great. All right, so I will, like I said, put together a survey to get some more detailed feedback on reports and the direction we want to head there. So be looking for that probably before the end of the week to come out so that you guys have plenty of time before we meet next time to get with your teams and talk about what would be great.
Summer, that initial survey submitted, the one you just sent out yesterday.
Yeah, what about it, Hillary?
When would you like that completed by?
I mean, as soon as possible. Half the states are already in, so as soon as you have a chance to chat with your state leadership or whoever you feel like you want to consult with on that, then send it over. So, yep.
Okay, hopefully early next week.
That'd be great. That'd be
Okay,
great.
thanks.
Thank you. All right, so want to move forward to talking about the classroom coach log enhancements. We started to discuss this last time. I'm not sure if you have had time to go back and get any additional feedback from your teams, but I did some further kind of consideration and thinking about this, and so I've put together a list of potential changes. So wanted to go through those and certainly add any other ones that I'm missing on here. So flipping the yeses to nos or making them check boxes. I think this is a question about how we want the form to function. And so one of the things that I thought about in thinking about how this tool is used in practice is that it's not all done on one day necessarily. You want to be able to have this tool perhaps be one that you can go back and modify or make updates to, and then eventually finally complete it over the course of time. So how does the requiring and the changing of those fields impact that, and also still impact our ability to make sure that those components of the coaching cycle have been truly completed. I think we have an opportunity here to really leverage PIDS and what it can do to enhance the way this is done, to ensure that the coaching cycle is truly completed with all 3 components in it with this tool. So just keep that in the back of your mind too. I think there's opportunity here to make that better. So we'll kind of come back to that. Adding an upload option, that's pretty simple. I think that's an easy do. Adding an action plan component to this. So this could be a bigger project than I think I initially realized, because in that coaching cycle, talking about these goals and revising these goals and updating them and going through that review process with the goal setting is a really big piece of this tool. So I want to give it the space that it deserves in this tool. And so maybe we come up with kind of like what we did in the program action plan, a space to put specific goals and steps and when we hope to be done with them, or some specifics around that, that then is logged in here and carried forward to the next coach log that is done, so that from cycle to cycle, you don't have to re-enter those goals and the information that was on the previous log. So that's something I wanted to throw out to the group. What are your initial thoughts on what that action planning goal piece could look like in here?
I'm okay with that, Summer, as long as it wouldn't be required. I think, at least in Wisconsin, our practitioner coaches will not have time to write up an action plan with the teacher and then also put it into the system like that, which is why I like the document upload. So that would be a place that at least in Wisconsin, a lot of people are just handwriting these action plans and sharing them with teachers. And so to ask somebody to also go in and enter it piece by piece, I think it's gonna put people over the edge. And so being able to upload it would be nice.
And just to get a little clarification on that, these action plans are specific to a classroom, right? Because these coaching logs are classroom specific.
Yeah. And probably, yes, to a classroom / teacher, yes.
Right, yeah. Also to the teacher, which brought up another question that I had about this tool as well. But yeah, I think that would be certainly reasonable in making this a tool that we want to accommodate across the board, across states. The flexibility of using it if they want it and not using it. How are other states tracking those goals in your practice-based coaching cycles?
I'm
Maybe
sorry.
that's
Yeah, sorry, Summer. I think I missed a little bit when you were explaining what the action planning part actually meant. I'm still looped into the other action plans.
We're talking about the classroom coach log and the enhancements. Yeah. So the classroom / teacher goals and planning that are happening between the coach doing practice-based coaching and the person in the classroom.
Okay. So
I know action planning is happening in New Hampshire regularly. I'm not sure that it's getting where it's going, if it's just between the coach and the practitioners, or if it's getting input somewhere. I am wondering if this is a place, in New Hampshire has talked about PD for their practitioners. And if this coach log was a place to break out times, because like observation would not necessarily be PD, but action planning would be considered PD. If there is a place to put in the amount of time for some of these parts of the cycle, that we can then pull right out of PIDS, and then that would be an easy way to calculate PD.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So it sounds like, this feels like a point to take back to your states and have further deeper discussion on what this might look like, and how can we again leverage PIDS to clearly tell us when a coaching cycle has been completed, that we've gone through the goal setting, the focused observation, the debrief, that has all happened, so we can say this is a complete coaching cycle. Whereas in like Excel tools, they may or may not have the ability to really truly almost force the user, force isn't the right word, but promote the user in making sure they realize that all three of those components are needed before they jump to saying the cycle is complete, which I think could be a real strong benefit here. So a couple other pieces that we have already talked about: removing the teapot and tippy toes question, which is not in the NCPMI tool, and then just aligning it up with the current NCPMI tool. So there would be some minor changes there, a couple language changes, nothing crazy, but just a few things. Durations, I think, is a big key data point that folks may want to consider in looking at making these tools really meaningful for their teams. And so I think it makes sense to perhaps add a duration total at the top. So as we kind of talked about, we started this cycle on this day, but we didn't complete it and do the debrief until this day. So having that overall, it took us 5 days to complete this cycle view of the tool would be potentially helpful. In addition to having durations for each of the sections, so durations of observations and debriefs, so breaking that down as well, so that we can pull out that type of data to see how much time are we spending on observations in this classroom, and how does that compare to teapot scores, which is like the end all goal in looking at fidelity, right? So I think in just having more options there to capture that duration would be a nice enhancement to the tool. I kind of already talked about ensuring that the cycle is completing. So thinking about how we can make this tool really let the user know that those are the 3 pieces that are needed, rather than just hidden in a checkbox or somewhere small like that, that it really is talking about that practice-based coaching cycle. Already mentioned here also allowing users to partially complete it and return to the form and it's finished, yet requiring them to complete the 3 stages of the cycle. So thinking about what that might look like and how that might function, so that it's convenient and easy to check the boxes. We can come back to it and it gives us that flexibility, but it also is encouraging us to truly complete it. Considerations for Zoom versus in-person. I think that's a new thing that we have talked about in the past, adding a component in there to indicate if follow-up was done via Zoom or in person. Maybe, I don't know if observations of the other pieces, have they been happening via Zoom in states, or has it just not been happening? I don't know that, but I think allowing the option to capture that would be helpful.
I think that would be great to compare, outcomes with in-person, the more in-person coaching or Zoom coaching. Some of our coaches aren't going into classrooms very often, and is that impacting their outcome?
Right. Is it necessary? Would it be helpful to have a place to indicate when we're scheduling the start of the next coaching cycle on this tool? Something that I just thought of, wanted to throw it out there just in thinking about that, planning what's next. Or is it something in practice that is done at the end of a cycle to say, this is when we're going to do another one?
I think typically the end of the coaching cycle is finishing up your action plan, in which you do designate dates for your action steps. And that sort of dictates start of the next coaching cycle. So I don't know how I don't know. I guess you could just take it off the action. Like you could have it. I just that's at least in my experience, that's how it typically works.
So Okay, that's helpful. Are you saying that then the completion of the action steps, where's the start and stop to another cycle, I guess? Is it the change of an action step or a completion, or what does that look like in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so right, one cycle is you do a focused observation, you reflect on that focused observation, and then you adjust, or then you think about your action plan. Did we complete the action? If not, why not? Do we need to adjust it? And if we did, let's write a new one. Right. And so that, like, the idea, I think the idea would be like one cycle would be, you would hope to have your action steps completed in one cycle, because that's, at least again, in my experience in Wisconsin, typically it's one goal for one cycle. But right, the idea is like if they didn't meet it, you would just adjust the actions, like the dates of the action plan.
So I think that key piece that I was maybe missing in my thought of this is that there might be multiple goals. You're saying there's one goal for one cycle.
Yeah, I mean, and someone else should talk again. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I know.
I would. I'm just honestly not sure. So I just, I can't say anything about it. I just don't know. But, I'm sure, whatever you have to say, Marissa, it's always great. So, keep going.
That is untrue. No, I mean, it really depends on the teacher, right? Because some teachers can handle 2 goals in one cycle, and some teachers can only handle 1 goal. Some teachers can only do half a goal. Like, it really depends on the teacher and the goal. I don't really know how helpful it would be to have the date of the start of the next cycle. Like, I don't know who is that data for, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. All right, and then
Sorry, Summer, I had a quick, I was only curious about the allowing the users to partially complete and return to finish the form. I know we kind of been talking about that capability in PIDS for a while. So have we figured out a way to make that work?
well, I guess that is a Ben question. Punt it to you, Ben.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, you can kind of look at the way the pre-filled action plans work for an example. So they are marked as not fully reviewed up until you mark off those. I think there's 4 sections you have to review fully. When it comes to a partial completion, we could do something like the program action plan where they review each section. Or we could just have some sort of field at the bottom that says, are you done with the form? Is it fully complete? Yes, no. And then that would trigger all the validation. So like if you said it was fully complete, before you can save, it runs through all the validation, make sure all the fields are there, all their correct values. So yeah, there's definitely options. The questions obviously come down to, do we ever include partials in reporting? We just have to make clear. If we don't, it has to be clear in the documentation that partials are not included, because otherwise people will have some partials in there and wonder why it's not showing up.
Yeah, the way I was just thinking about it while you were talking is that unless it's a completed form that's saved, it doesn't ever really exist in terms of like a reporting sense. That's the way I would like it to be.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that.
But I do love the idea of that being possible, because I feel like it opens up, I mean, I don't want to, give you all that work, but I feel like you could have that for everything. You really could.
Yeah.
I was just saying.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think the last piece here on my list of stuff for the classroom coach log is we link it to a teacher or the coachee or the coachees. Is it necessary to link it to a classroom? And so this kind of really speaks to, in practice, how is the tool used? My mind went to, if you have turnover in a classroom, what happens in this process, and is there benefit in reporting of linking it to a specific classroom? So maybe this classroom over the course of the year has had 2 different coaches, or different teachers, but they're doing really well, and so I don't know, thoughts on that?
I find that in my experience, that the classrooms, like the kids that are in that classroom seem to change more. It's not as consistent. And like the teacher, in my experience, the teacher is just an easier starting point to kind of compare all of that off of than like the variability of all that's in a classroom.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about obviously practice-based coaching and like really implementing that fully. If you have a classroom that's truly fully implementing it and rocking and their teapot scores are great, and changes happen, whether that's teacher changes or child changes, is the expectation that those practices that have been put in place continue on with the next audience or group that you're working with? I don't know that, but something to consider.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit, Summer.
Mhm.
So, right, whenever we were using the teapot or tippy toes or coaching, we're coaching a teacher and not a classroom, right? So if the teacher
Right.
leaves, we wouldn't expect the new teacher coming in to just be doing whatever the teacher that left was doing. But we do expect the same teacher to be using the same practices no matter what students are in their room, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
With some, like, obviously we're going to see some variability depending on who's in there from time to time, but we would expect the idea is the teacher's using the practices no matter what's going on in the room.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. That's helpful.
The other piece too, Summer, is kids are coming and going in classrooms all the time. When they turn 3, then they enter. So the dynamics of the classroom could change as well. So I think just the focus on the teacher is important.
So, right. Okay. So what we're saying is probably not necessary to have a classroom linkage to the classroom coach log.
It sounds counterintuitive, but I think yes. But
I was actually going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will also say, like, I like linking it to the teacher makes sense too, right? Because sometimes teachers switch classrooms and you would like to kind of
Follow that teacher.
continue to be coached. Like
Yeah.
we've had multiple toddler teachers that switched to the preschool room, and losing that data would stink. So
I think we're good in that regard. In the Pyramid Model Professional information page, there is a section where you can do classroom assignments. So we do kind of have a pseudo link between the coaching information and the classroom. So you choose, say, Ian as a coach. We know that Ian was assigned to classroom A during the time frame he was coached.
That's true. Okay.
I would love to explore that more, of how we can utilize that in reporting. Like we do with child, right? We have, like, children have to be assigned to a classroom in order to pull some reports. So I think it would be really cool if we did that with employees. I'm just going to put it out there, and then I'm gonna
All right. Well, I think for next steps with this group, let's get some feedback on reports so that we can, as Ben wraps up the completion of the leadership coach log. My request so far has been, let's get an Excel export available for that tool right away so that we at least have that to run some data, because I think that coach log tool is going to be one that is going to be used pretty quickly in states. It's going to be adopted. It's going to be used frequently on a monthly basis. So want to give consideration to what a report would look like there. So get some feedback, please, on that area, and then go over the classroom coach log and these pieces that we've discussed here with your teams, and think about how we can really, it's the first priority right now in form enhancements. So how do we want this? What do we want this to look? What do we want the story to tell? how can we make this a better tool in PIDS and really leverage the system to promoting good coaching. So.
I just
Sound
want to
good?
clarify something really quickly. I had a question, and
Yeah.
forgive my ignorance, but when you talk about a coaching cycle, when we were talking about these cycles, are we talking about like the occurrence of meeting with one teacher over the course of time, or is it the cycle was one meeting?
It's
Like one-
3. Yeah, and I had to go on the YouTubes and find Denise Finder's presentation today to really get my head fully wrapped around it from what I learned. And I put some links in the agenda today, so that might be helpful Ian too. But
Okay.
it's hitting on these 3, it's completing these 3 pieces, this goal setting picture, the focused observation, the debrief, and that's out of order, but in that cycle. So Liz, is that something maybe you want to chime in on and help us wrap our heads around too, and from Massachusetts?
Yeah, sure. So typically you have the focus, or you have the meeting, then you have the focused observation, then you have the action planning from that, and then you have a focused observation again. So it's like there's these it's not I would say within 2 weeks, all those things kind of happen.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And from what I was gaining from the presentation too, Ian, that I saw today, was that it sounded like with the Excel tool that is used within CPMI, one of the challenges they were having is people marking that a coaching cycle was done when really truly they missed a piece in there. And so how can we, that's where I'm thinking, okay, how can we use
That's where
PIDS?
that's where like the not having it be completed,
Yeah,
during
yeah.
piece by piece came up. I understand. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense now. Thanks for explaining that. That'll help me out.
And sidebar, I really think that's smart to do, because I think that even kind of a seasoned practice-based coaching coach can kind of lose sight of, oh, wait, like it just kind of keeps us honest, I think. So I think that makes sense. That makes sense.
Thanks. We'll get some more details and feedback on this from your teams, and then we will go over that in